Hello seniors, welcome to the informational video about Lynbrook's mock election, which will take place November 7th and 8th. Top of the quad, brunch and lunch. Come vote and get a good sense of what the variety of issues that Californians face on any given ballot are like. This will help prep you for future elections, and it gives us a great idea of what our students feel. So join the process. We're looking at the question on how seniors feel on the candidates and the issues, so let's jump right in. One of the probably the most obvious things that's going to be on this mock ballot is you're going to be voting for the President of the United States. And here are the 5 candidates and their vice presidential running mates as one ticket that are on the ballot here in California. We'll start with Gloria Estela La Riva and Dennis J. Banks. This is from the Peace and Freedom Party. Donald J. Trump and Michael R. Pence representing the Republican and American Independent parties. Gary Johnson and Bill Weld representing the Libertarian Party. Jill Stein and Ajamu Baraka representing the Green Party, and finally Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine representing the Democratic Party. You will select one of these tickets. You will also be looking at an opening in the United States Senate. So one of our 2 Senate seats is up for election, and we have the current senator is stepping down. So we have Kamala Harris, who's the Attorney General of California. She's a Democrat. And Loretta Sanchez, who is a U.S. Congresswoman, and she's also a Democrat. The California system works that during the primaries, the top 2 vote getters then go on to the general election. This is a relatively recent trend. So we have 2 Democrats that are vying for the seat. Continuing with that same vein, we have 2 Democrats who were the top 2 vote getters for the United States Congress position for the 17th District. We have incumbent Mike Honda, who is currently sitting in that 17th seat position. And we have Ro Khanna, who is an educator and author, who is vying for that seat and also ran for the seat against Mike Honda in the previous election. So these are both Democrats, the top 2 vote getters from the primary elections. All right, we're going to turn to the California propositions. I urge you to take a closer look at these propositions, but we're going to give you a very brief summary, the fiscal impact, some pro and cons, or some people that are for it and people that are against it, and also some major endorsements. This is not meant to be a complete analysis by any measure. This is just to give you a starter's view of what these are about. And so you can see there's some good diversity in there. So we'll start with California Proposition 55. We've selected 7 of those propositions, and this is the first one. What this is it's an extension by 12 years of the temporary personal income tax increases enacted in the year 2012 on earnings over $250,000 in a year, with revenues allocated to K-12 schools, California community colleges, and in certain years, healthcare. So the fiscal impact here would be, it would raise between $4 and $9 billion in taxes each year for the state. Roughly half of that money would then go to schools and community college, and then Medi-Cal could receive up to $2 billion extra annually, depending on the taxes collected and other factors. The pre-existing proposition is set to expire in 2018 rather, and this would extend it out until 2030. People for it say that it provides billions of dollars for schools and community college, and it only affects California residents who can afford to pay more in taxes. And those against it say that voters should simply respect their decision to have it be a temporary tax and let it expire in 2018, and that it also hurts small businesses and eliminates jobs. Here's some of the supporters that are for it and against it. And at any given time during this, you may want to pause and take a look at some of these organizations. And look into a little bit more about which organizations you support and why they have the views that they do. We'll move on to Proposition 56. This is an increase, a proposed increase in the cigarette tax by $2 per pack, with equivalent increases on other tobacco products, including electronic cigarettes. So we're having an increase in tax by $2 per pack of cigarettes, with the intention being to diminish the number of smokers out there and to make smoking less of an attractive incentive. The fiscal impact would just be the state would collect somewhere between $1.3 and $1.6 billion in the first year of the tax, Although the money that was going to be coming in the years after that would probably be lower if people end up buying fewer tobacco products. Most of that money you can see there used for a variety of things. People for it say that raising taxes on tobacco products helps prevent people from smoking, and it provides millions of dollars for important healthcare programs. Those against it say it doesn't provide enough money to help people quit smoking, and that it would spend too much money in the enforcement area trying to enforce the tobacco tax. Supporters, yes and no. Moving on to California Proposition 57. This proposition is both an initiative constitutional amendment and a statute. What it does is it allows parole considerations for nonviolent felons. It authorizes sentence credit for rehabilitation, good behavior, and education, and also provides that a juvenile court judge decides whether a juvenile will be prosecuted as an adult, which is a possibility in the case of certain crimes. The fiscal impact in this is, for the state, probably saving money in the tens of millions of dollars each year. Moving youth offenders to juvenile courts would also save a few $1,000,000. You may see an uptick in the amount of money counties spend on additional monies in the short term to supervise a larger number of felons on parole. And also moving youth out of adult court would likely cost counties a few $1,000,000 each year. So some local costs go up and some state costs go down. Arguments on 57. People for it say they would reduce overcrowding in state prisons and save money spent on nonviolent offenders. It would also encourage inmates to take advantage of opportunities within prison, like education and rehabilitation. People against it say that it would release a greater number of convicted felons onto the streets. It would also weaken crime laws and fail to honor the original sentence ordered by judges. Supporters, yes and no. Going on to California Proposition 58. This is really a tweaking of a proposition that was put into play in 1998. What it does is it preserves a requirement that public schools ensure students obtain English language proficiency. It requires school districts to solicit parent and community input in developing language acquisition programs. It also requires instruction to ensure English acquisition as rapidly and effectively as possible. In doing so, it authorizes school districts to establish dual language immersion programs for both native and non-native English speakers. So this really advances the local control over how they feel is the best way to teach students and to teach them English. This is an issue, certainly, I think that you probably should look into the specifics of much more than this brief summary. Fiscal impact would have basically no effect on the state budget and very minimal, if any, effects on local districts and counties as well. Arguments for 58. People would say English learners should be educated in whatever way best meets their learning needs, and this helps address that. And it would give parents and school districts more control over the way children are educated. People against it say that the state has required has required instruction predominantly in English, and student tests have improved during that time period. And it would also hurt some students' chances of learning English by creating classrooms that predominantly teach in Spanish in some areas. Supporters. Move to California Proposition 62. This is a repealing of the death penalty and replaces it with life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. This would apply retroactively to existing death sentences, so anybody that currently is on death row. It increases the portion of life inmates' wages that may be applied to victim restitution as well. The fiscal impact, there would be cost savings from changes to murder trials. The state would also save around $150 million annually within a few years, including $55 million spent fighting death penalty appeals each year. People for it saying getting rid of the death penalty would save the state millions of dollars in costs, and it's also the only way to make sure that no innocent person is ever executed in California. People against it say that we need the strongest possible punishment for the most serious first-degree murderers, and that the pay that inmates would put towards victims' families cannot possibly make up for lost life. Here's some supporters. Our second to last California proposition that we'll look at is 63. This requires background check and Department of Justice authorization to purchase ammunition. Prohibits the possession of large capacity ammunition magazines. It established procedures for enforcing laws prohibiting firearm possession by specified persons. And it requires Department of Justice participation in the federal National Instant Criminal Background Check System. So it's an expansion of gun control over to the area of ammunition. The fiscal impact is that new court procedures could cost in the tens of millions of dollars annually. Costs for prisons, jails, parole, and probation would probably not be more than a few $1,000,000 each year. And some of these costs would be paid for by the fees on ammunition sellers or gun buyers. People for it say that it would make sure that violent criminals and people with mental illnesses do not have access to guns, and it strengthens existing gun laws and prevents dangerous people from buying ammunition. People against it say that it would make it harder for people who follow the law to buy ammunition, and that the costs for Proposition 63 could be better spent training police, hiring more officers, and getting violent criminals off the street. Here are some of the supporters. Finally, we have California Proposition 64. This is certainly a trend across America here, and this is a proposed legalization of marijuana under state law for use by adults 21 or older. This imposes a state tax on the sale and cultivation of marijuana. It provides for industry licensing and established standards for marijuana products. This allows local regulation and taxation of marijuana. By the way, this is different than previous ballot measures where it is looked at medicinal marijuana. This would be just the straight legalization of marijuana. The cost of Prop 64 and how much money it would raise are really unclear. The amount coming in from taxes depends on how much non-medical marijuana is grown and how much is purchased through the new legal system. Over time, state and local governments could earn taxes in the hundreds of millions of dollars or more than $1 billion each year. It all depends on the amount that is actually purchased. The state and local governments could also save tens of millions of dollars on court and law enforcement costs in every year. People for it say that Prop 64 would set up a safe legal system that would allow adults to use recreational marijuana, and that it would bring in more than $1 billion each year and lower state court costs. People against it say that Prop 64 would increase the illegal drug trade and hurt low-income communities, and that it would allow marijuana to be grown near schools and puts youth at a risk of addiction. And here are some supporters for Proposition 64. And that completes the look at the propositions and the races that you're going to be voting on. So please research more, find out what candidates and what propositions you want to support. And I hope that you come out on November 7th and 8th, brunch and lunch, to vote. And the results of the election will be posted on election night, November 8th. So we look forward to hearing from you and your practicing of democracy. Thanks, folks. Go out and vote.